Well, sometimes it's not easy being blue. Just ask blueberry producers in this province. In recent years, severe drought throughout the province has deeply cut wild blueberry yields and strained fields. And despite less inventory, surprisingly, prices have remained relatively low. But all of that could change this year. Peter Van Dyke is the vice chair of the Wild Blueberry Producers Association of Nova Scotia and a grower himself. So the harvest is underway these days. How are things going in the fields?
Probably for most, it's better than expected. There's some areas that were hurt the worst in the drought last year are still very negatively affected and going into the second year. So that add insult to injury for those growers. But I think for a lot of growers, we're going to have an average crop or a little above.
Okay, can you just kind of put it in context for us? What was happening last year and maybe the year before that with those growing conditions? The crop took a real hit, did it not?
Last year was I mean, I've done this all my life, and last year was by far the worst I've ever seen as far as drought. Just went forever, and the temperatures and humidity was just on top of that. The plants are pretty, pretty resilient, but coming along, harvest basically starts early August on our end, and it's a little later as you go up the province. But we were starting to see negative effects probably mid to late July. And by early August, the blueberries had actually shriveled right up on the plants. Most of the berries were so tiny and shriveled up when you harvest in those areas that were hit the hardest. The berries were still on the plant after you run your machine over. They were so tiny and they had no weight to them. So really negative effect as far as the provincial yield. Cut us in half, maybe a little less than half.
And so what has the big difference? I mean, is it just that we're getting that just enough moisture?
It's just enough moisture, and moisture also is quite timely. Blueberries are 85% moisture for the most part when they're ripe. And we had some nice rains through July, and that's the time when the berries are starting to ripen and starting to size. And I think we had perfect timing on those. But at the same time, if there's no blueberries there, you know, some of the ones that were hurt, they didn't have blueberries to size up. So blueberries are, we get paid by the pound. So the more of them there and the more water that's in them, the more pounds we have. And so that's, as a grower, that's what we're looking for. But again, it's hard to be really crazy excited about the crop, knowing that there's growers in this province that are suffering really poor production for the second year in a row and have the huge, we have huge input costs, and what's going on in the world. So those input costs have really skyrocketed this year. And then to have a poor production on top of that it's really harmful to these growers.
Yeah, and I gather maybe to add insult to injury, there was the problem with inventory last year. So many farmers and farms hit so hard, and yet the prices, I gather, remained relatively low. Can you explain that? And did you see that changing this year at all?
Well, last year's price did end up a decent price in the end. And I think this year, again, nobody's come out with a hard, fast price, but I'm pretty confident that the price will be similar to last year's, which is good to have that fairly reasonable price 2 years in a row, because the drought year came off of 2 years of terrible price. And so the farmers were struggling, even though they had yield in 23, 24. 25 was the devastating crop.
I know you don't like to presuppose things too much, but what are you expecting this season to turn out to be, price-wise and in terms of and productivity as well?
I think productivity for the province of Nova Scotia will be somewhere in our average of probably 45 million pounds. And again, guessing and being optimistic, but I think our price will be close to 90 cents a pound. Our field price, that is.
And in terms of lessons learned from the past few years, I mean, how much can you do to protect against the climate impact that you saw, and the impact on the crop?
Well, we're probably learning a whole bunch of new things of what the plant does in these situations, because again, it was, in all of my years in the blueberry field, I've never seen anything that drastic. So, I've seen things in the fields this year, even though they look better. I've seen things that I've never seen before, but I'm blaming on conditions of the drought last year. A blueberry crop is a 2-year cycle. So last year, our crop was hurt severely, but what our our fields, our other half of our acreage was in sprout. And so that's just growing a plant. And so the drought hurt those sprouts, which was going to be this year's crop. So, for a blueberry farmer, we have 24 months that Mother Nature can beat us up. And sometimes she does. And sometimes she's really nice to us. But it's not the same as just growing a normal vegetable crop where you seed and harvest within a few months and you kind of can hold your breath that long and hope for the best. But it's hard to hold your breath for 24 months.
Yeah, well, it seems like it's been a
So
challenge. We wish you the best this year. Peter Van Dyke, thanks so much.
you're very welcome.